This episode is brought to you by Portland Distro. If you like underground music, movies, and more, go to portlanddistro.com for licensed merch, vinyl, CDs, and more. Plug in the discount code 10OFF, TENOFF, for a 10% discount at portlanddistro.com. Hey, what's up, guys? This week, welcome back, Evan Hopper from Quell. Evan has recently rejoined us here on the soil of the United States of America. He's come back to his homeland. So how's it going, Evan? Are you doing well?
Going all right, man. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. Doing okay. Before we get started, I just want to run down a couple things. I want to welcome our brand new patron on Patreon, and that is one Dave Android. I'd like to thank him for joining the team. And for those of you who want to join Patreon, you can help the podcast out with as little as $1 a month. And that gets you 3 to 4 bonus episodes a month. And if you're doing the $5 patron, you will get early access to all episodes. So thanks, Dave. Thanks for joining the squad. We've got a lot of cool stuff coming down the line. We got a bunch of different sort of mini-series that we do on there, one of which is Long Shadows, a weird fiction podcast that Ralph and I do. And I think we have like 4 episodes of that out. And there's a bunch of stuff like, member-only musical things like demos, past releases, like things like that. Just insights into what's going on with different bands I played in and tombs and all that sort of stuff. You were just on Jackie's podcast, so this is kind of relevant to you. Did you know that basically between our little cartel of podcasts, we have Monday through Friday covered? On Monday, we've got the Horror Wolf 666 podcast. On Tuesday, we have Into the Necrosphere, which is Jackie's podcast, our mutual friend. Wednesday, we have Everything Went Black. Thursday is Necromaniacs, my horror podcast I do with Mike Scandato and Jeff Kashid. And Friday is Break the Apocalypse, which Mike's brother, John Draper, I never figured out why they have different last names, but Mike Scandato's brother, John Draper, hosts that podcast. So we have a full podcast experience for you guys. So check out all these shows. And Monday through Friday, all the way alive, man.
That's awesome. That's totally awesome. Yeah, I mean, it's a good group of guys, too. Like, everybody, the whole community is super supportive. I absolutely love it. There's been a lot of crossover from, I kind of got my introduction into this whole, crowd through Jackie's podcast. And, slowly but surely, I met you. I met, the other guys that you were mentioning as well. And, there's just been this really nice, support system between everybody. And I think that's really cool. Especially, a lot of us live in different places and have never met, yet it does feel like a tight-knit community, and everyone just, sharing everybody else's podcast on their own personal Instagrams or Facebooks or what have you, And, I think it's great, man. We're kind of we're slowly but surely turning into a little force to be reckoned with. And, I just absolutely love that. It's super sweet.
Yeah, I'm really overjoyed, man. It's like I've been doing this for a while, but it's only been recently that it seems to really be catching on with people. And, not the least of which is the support that I get from all these guys I just mentioned. And it was really cool meeting Jackie, man. Out of the blue, when we were doing press for Under Sullen Skies, I got a message from Katie, who has also been a guest on Jackie's podcast. And she's like, this guy wants to interview you as a guest on his show. And just, we hit it off and just stayed friends, man. Became pretty tight, I would say. And it's been a lot of fun, man. It's cool how this whole thing has grown.
Yeah, it's a funny, I don't know if it's funny, but it's an interesting story on how I met him too. It was, I was just talking about this to a friend of mine today because an episode that we just dropped today. And he was listening to it. He was curious how me and Jackie had met. And, it was during the pandemic, things just started like, the world was kind of going crazy or what have you. And I had just literally had just moved to Sweden. I didn't really know a whole lot of people. And so in that like sort of isolation, I just started listening to podcasts, just to, I don't know. I don't really know what drew me to it. I hadn't really listened to a whole lot of podcasts prior to that. And I found his because I was kind of curious about like, were there any metal podcasts out there? And so, and I coincidentally also found Metal Matters when you were still hosting that too.
Oh yeah.
But so I reached out to him, and I had just done the very first Quell EP, and I told him like a little spiel about myself, which I've since refined since those days. But like the first time when you're reaching out, you just have this like long spiel about like, hey, I'm this guy, blah blah blah, or whatever. And we ended up doing like an impromptu Zoom call, which we didn't record, but we ended up talking for over like 3 hours. And both of us regret not recording that session because it was a pretty cool session. But then I think maybe a few weeks later, we did the very first episode together. Ever since then, we've been friends, and it's blossomed into quite a relationship, even though still never met the guy in person. I consider him a brother. We talk offline and just like you and I talk as well. And I think it's just absolutely cool that we live in an era where that's a possibility. It's really neat.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And so I never got a feel for how long you lived in Sweden. So it was what, like a year or 2 years, something like that?
Total, it was 3 years. But the first year that I was there, I was back and forth because I was in the process of getting my visa approved. So I was still living there on my U.S. passport. And the deal is when you're in Europe, I mean, you probably know this too, but when you're on a U.S. passport, you can only be in Europe for up to 90 days.
Right.
So I'd be 90 days in Sweden, and then I'd have to leave, and I'd go back to the States. And thankfully, at the time, the job I was working was cool with that. So I'd go back and I'd work for the job, and I'd come back again. And I did that until I got approved. And then I stayed there for it's about 3.5 years in total, because I was there for another 2.5 years. Like I said, I just got back in April. So I would say that's roughly about, half a year there. So, so about 3.5 years in total was I in Europe.
And now you're back in the States, because I remember you and I were in touch when you first came back. And so how long has it been since you've been in the States now?
I was talking about this with Jackie too, and I think it's been about a month. I can't remember the exact date I came back. A lot's been happening since I got back, but it's been roughly a month.
How's it feel to come back, man? It seems like there's all this like unrest and fucking misery going on right now. And how does that feel to come back in the middle of all this stuff?
It's a trip, man. I mean, not just that, because I mean that, I saw bits of that out there in Europe too. I mean, for instance, like with the whole situation in Ukraine, when I was, I had to renew my visa in December, but I got approved for my renewal in December. I went and got my renewal. I think it was, I don't know, it was January or February. I went to the migration office there in Stockholm, and there was like, talk about feeling like out of place. There was all these Ukrainian refugees like just standing in line, like the longest line I've seen ever at this office, and I'm there just to get my fucking photo taken again, and like there's all these people that are like trying to get like asylum in the country and stuff, and so obviously we saw that. We saw a lot of that in Stockholm, and there were some there were some signs of the rising prices and happening, but not so much as it is here. That was definitely a big shocker coming back to the United States, and just seeing like, especially like in Virginia. Virginia is always like, I always kind of go on like, the highest gas prices I've ever seen have been when I lived in California, and it's usually about double what it is on the East Coast, or at least what it is in Virginia.
Yeah.
But like right now, gas in Virginia is like sitting right around like $4.50 a gallon, which is like unheard of. I mean, typically it's around $2 a gallon here. And same thing with going to the grocery store. I mean, I just went to the grocery store today. Literally, I got a lemon, some spinach, and a thing of orange juice. Came out to $10.
Damn.
I mean, it's just yeah, man. So it's getting wild out there, And yeah, it's weird, I mean, I'm definitely in Trump country, and I mean, you and I have talking about this before. I'm not wild about that. Um, uh, the people are nice, for the most part. I don't have any issues with anybody. At least I haven't had any issues, but there's just a lot of that Trump rhetoric everywhere. I mean, I was telling Jackie this too. Like, one of my neighbors down the road from me has a flagpole outside. And he's got a Trump flag above the American flag on his flagpole. I mean, and yeah, that's just, I don't know. That's something that, is strange to me. I'm not a big fan of government in general, but definitely not of that sort of rhetoric and that sort of belief system.
Yeah,
So,
well, it's the whole right wing extremist mainstreaming of the right wing extremism in this country is very alarming. I mean, prior to Donald Trump, like, you'd get these right wingers, all these militia guys that were way out in the fringes. But a lot of this rhetoric now is becoming front and center. Like, in the, it's more your average conservative is a right wing extremist almost.
yeah, and I think that's what bugs me the most about it, is that it's getting shoved down your face. And I'm not a big fan of anything being shoved in my face, no
Sure.
matter what it is. Yeah, so that's not something I'm super stoked about. But as far as the town that I'm in is concerned, this town used to be a real, I think I mentioned this to you last time we talked on the podcast. It used to be a real hillbilly town, and it's changed quite a bit. I've seen a lot of more culture come into, like, the downtown area, and it seems that there are more diverse people moving to this town because we're in a national forest here. So there's a lot of, like, outdoor activities, and that draws a lot of, you're more, I guess, you're more outdoorsy, you're more hippie, you're more, like, liberal types as well. So their influences also come into the town, and I think that's a good thing. That's a much needed thing to this town. And so that's a positive. And just being in nature is positive. Living in Stockholm, there is nature in Sweden, of course, but living in the big city, you don't really realize it. I mean, you lived in New York for a while, so you kind of know what I'm talking about, I'm sure. But it starts to affect you in ways that you don't even really realize. When you never see the stars, and it's constantly, like, noisy, and there's just, like, this energy that sort of just gets through your skin, and it starts to affect you. You start to become a little bit more short-tempered and a little bit more irritable, and yeah, and it's just like, when I got back here and, like, smelled some fresh air, and, like, I've been able to, like, go hiking every day. It's been nice, and I enjoy that. And yeah, so that's what it's like being here. And then the first week, not the second week I was back, I took a trip out to California, and saw some friends of mine out there, and that was neat too. That's it's been an interesting month so far. I've gotten, like, I don't know if closure is the right word, but I've since I've been gone for so long, I've had thoughts about, like, the places I used to live, and kind of like, maybe like a hole or something, kind of like, a gap where those places used to exist in my life. And so it was nice to be able to go back and sort of see them again, and and realize maybe it's not as romantic. I don't have to romanticize it as much as I maybe did when I was not in those places. So yeah, it's been cool.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting to do that. I've done that because I've lived in a bunch of places too. I mean, primarily I lived in New York, but in my early 20s, there was, like, this, kind of Jack Kerouac phase, Peter Pan phase, where I was traveling a lot. And I lived out in Washington State for a while in this town called Bellingham. And it was a good time. I was, like, young, I was, like, this young guy. And I would romanticize that time as well. But then, years later, I went back on tour. It was like we didn't even play there. It was like we played in Vancouver and we were playing in Seattle the next day, and we were driving through, and I'm like, oh, let's stop for lunch in this town that I used to live in, and it was just like puts things in perspective when you go there years later. Like you don't really everything's it's almost like this ghost of a town. Things have
Yeah.
changed. People have moved on. You don't recognize anyone. Your street looks different. Like all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, like I've been saying this lately, that I feel like a stranger in a familiar place.
I could relate to that, man.
Yeah.
That's a relatable feeling for sure. So the last time I had you on, it was right around the time the Cult is Dead came out, the latest Quell record. And what's actually nice, I guess, about being a one man operation is like moving around the world like you have. It doesn't really affect your productivity as a band. You can just kind of set up wherever you are, and you still have pretty much everything in place, right?
Yeah. I can pretty much put my whole studio in a suitcase and take it around with me.
So have
Save
you?
for like save for like the microphones and stuff like that. I went to like I usually go to a studio because I can't afford like $8,000 microphone
Nah, it's
screaming.
better to do that. Better to do that anyway, man. It's like when you're recording, it's always better to have like if you're doing something ambitious, like a full length. It's better to have someone to help you engineer that rather than try to do everything yourself.
Yeah, definitely.
So have you had thoughts of doing any more Quell material? Are you working on anything right now?
Yeah, I'm currently working on some stuff. I'm at the moment I'm just writing all the songs on guitar. So I've got two that I'm satisfied with, like, and are absolutely complete. And I am I think the direction I want to go in is probably just do another EP. There was quite a big undertaking doing the full length, and honestly, I just don't. I mean, who knows? I might say this right now on the podcast, and then like a month from now, I'll change my mind. But at the moment, I'm not feeling as much inspiration to pull off something that big. So I'm just sort of going with the flow and just recording ideas that come to me and seeing what I can make out of it. I want to constantly improve, so I don't want to put out anything that I think is like less than what I've done in the past. So at the moment, I'm just going to focus on maybe doing like a 4-song EP and just trying to make it as good as possible, and really just like zero in on all the little things that I have to do. But it's been because of the move and because of some changes in my personal life. I've been struggling a little bit with writer's block, and so I've actually been going in a different direction. Not with Quell, but I've been working on some other type of music, and I'm trying to my hand at post punk and
Oh,
like
okay.
synth, like dark synthy stuff and post punk, and I just want to see what I can come up with that. And if it does turn into anything that I think is interesting and people might want to listen to, then I'll maybe release that also as like a one man project. And it's always been the type of music that I really enjoy, and I've played in post punk. I played in a post punk band when I was in Stockholm. I played bass in a band, and it was a lot of fun. I enjoy it, but I don't write that way because I've been writing metal music for since I was 15. So what's that? 19 years. I've been writing metal music and punk music. And when you don't play covers of post punk songs, or your brain's not oriented that way, it's the songs don't really come like that style doesn't come naturally to me. So it's been interesting to sort of force myself into that creative space. And I think my brain just needs that for a minute, just to take a break from black metal, and because I also don't want to one of the things, I don't know if you ever do this whenever you're writing songs for tunes, but oftentimes, like when I'm trying to write something new, I'll sit there and I'll fuck around on the guitar for a while, and I'll maybe come up with a cool riff, and I'll jam on that riff for a while, and I'll record it down, and then maybe an hour into playing, I'll realize that I'm just like starting to play old riffs that I had, previously written,
Sure.
And I don't want to like, I'm trying to, again, like I said just a little bit ago, like I want to do something, that's new and making progress. I don't want to just like, put out the same thing that I've done before. And I've been noticing at the moment that my writing has been doing that. So I'm taking it upon myself to force my brain into an uncomfortable creative space, and with the hopes of maybe coming up with something unique and cool and new on the Quell side, but also to see if maybe I can come up with some like new project that if it turns out to be anything cool, anything good. So.
Yeah, that's cool, man. It's funny you mentioned like how I have actually completed songs and recorded them, and years later I realized that some of the riffs were in a different song from an earlier record, actually.
Yeah, it's and it's difficult too because like I'll tell you one of the negative sides, one of the downsides to being a one-man band is that I don't practice. I don't have a band to practice with.
Right. Yeah.
So
yeah.
When I write these songs, a lot of times I never play them again. I mean, I have everything saved, in like the Reaper program, and I have everything like all the individual tracks. So if I do ever play live or something, I can go back and listen to it. I mean, and I did write the riffs, so I mean, they're still just like floating up there inside of my brain. I know I can play them again. But I just don't like sit there and go over like the same 6 songs over and over again because I don't have like a tour to be ready for or anything like that. So oftentimes they just sort of disappear for a little while, and then that's when I end up like playing a riff and I'm like, this sounds real familiar. I'm like, oh shit, like this is fucking off of like the first EP or something like that,
Yeah,
so
totally.
So and like now I'm up to 18 songs now with Quell, and so that's a lot of riffs floating around up in there. So I have to be really careful, and I don't change tuning or anything. I've been in D standard this entire time, so I got to be real careful when I'm writing that I don't I don't accidentally redo a riff that I've already done before.
Plagiarize yourself.
Yeah, plagiarize myself. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. Jeff Whitehead talked about that. I don't know if it was an interview that I read or heard somewhere. He doesn't really do podcasts, but so it might have been an interview, or it might have been that there's like a Vice thing about one man black metal. But I don't think it was part of that. But if you think about Leviathan, has probably between all the demos and everything, there's probably hundreds of songs that dude has.
Right.
And he was talking about how he couldn't really play live because he doesn't remember how to play any of them.
Yeah.
When it's crazy to think of like, when I read that, I was imagining like some of the most meaningful music is music that he's written. To me at least, between Lurker of Chalice and Leviathan, songs that I like listen to like to this day, and I get such like emotional satisfaction out of it. To think that might be something that guy has never once revisited. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a trip, because once an artist releases his or her music, it's no longer the artist's music. It becomes like part of the public domain, and what that song, the life of that song takes on to somebody else is, that guy or Jeff Whitehead, for instance, he's like, yeah, whatever, I've got 100 other fucking songs.
Yeah.
But that one to you is like, oh fuck, that's my jam, and yeah, it's totally a trip. I had the pleasure of meeting Alex Webster one time after a Cannibal Corpse show.
Nice. Yeah.
And there was this really cool club. It's no longer there. I think I brought this up to you before, but it was called Jack's Nightclub.
Yeah.
In Springfield. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah,
and
a lot of metal. That's like a metal stop on a lot of tours.
Oh yeah. I saw so many cool shows there, and it was in this strip mall. So the parking for like all these bands was just in the back of the strip mall. So like you just walk out the club and then just go around the building, and all the guys are there. So oftentimes we, after a show, we'd go back there and try to meet some of our role models and stuff. And I got to talk to him one time, and I asked him that question specifically. I was like, "How do you guys remember like all your shit?" And he goes, "We don't." we, he's like, we just fucking like, you know, we figure out whatever 12 songs we're gonna play or 18 songs we're gonna play, and then we just, you know, we have to bring the tabs out and we have to start relearning all of them again, you know. And it was really like, it was, you know, the first time that I realized that, okay, so, you know, these guys aren't, you know, like larger than life, you know, they're just human beings and they forget shit too, you know. So that was kind of a humbling moment to hear that from somebody as prolific as Alex Webster.
Oh, totally.
So yeah,
yeah.
it's everybody.
That, you know, like that, especially. I mean, a lot of their, especially their early material, like their newer songs are great. Like I actually really like the last couple of Cannibal records, and they're a little they're a little groovier. You know, they're not as like technical in some ways as their earlier material.
I think they really benefited from getting Eric Rutan, like not only Eric Rutan on board for engineering, because I think he started with that Kill record, engineering them. But then, you know, after O'Brien went off the reservation, then they got him in as like doing guitar duty, and I mean, I don't think you get a better guy when it comes to death metal guitar in your band. You know, I mean, fucking Morbid Angel fame, Hate Eternal fame. I mean, it's just, you know, that's a great guy to have in Cannibal Corpse for sure.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, he's one of the best, like, top guitar players in death metal. Eric Rutan.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's a controversial opinion to have, but like my favorite Morbid Angel albums are the ones that he's on.
Dude, Gateways to Annihilation is just fucking amazing, man. That's like one of my
Gateways to Annihilation. It's my favorite.
Yeah. No, that record, that's where they got the 7 strings, you know? And it's like super heavy and just brooding sounding, you know? But I mean, I like, you know, I like Altars of Madness. I like the first 2 or 3 best, really, but Gateways is up there, man. I would say Altars, Blessed, Gateways, and Covenant.
Yeah,
like probably my favorite Morbid Angel records.
And I'm a big fan of, I'm a big fan of Vincent. Like he's, don't get me wrong, I mean, he's death metal royalty, but I prefer Steve Tucker on vocals. I just think he just has, I don't know. No, there's something about that lineup on Gateways. It's untouchable for me. And that album will remain on my tier of great death metal albums forever.
I actually like Tucker's voice better, but I like Dave Vincent's whole like thing that he was doing on those first few records. You know, like the evil, like satanic shit, and
he's more creative. I will say that he takes more risks than Tucker does. Tucker's very in pocket, but Vincent definitely, you know, with the chanting, and stuff like that. Yeah, definitely doing more interesting things for sure.
Yeah, like he took all that stuff to heart. You know what I mean? Like he had there's a difference when someone's writing about occult stuff and, you know, this dark spirituality, and it's just words to them, and then there's a guy who goes the extra mile with that. And I feel like at that period, Dave Vincent was like, you know, into it. Like he was down for whatever the shit he was writing about.
You know? He's about it. He's about it for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. You know, Tucker had that other band, Warfather. Have you ever heard that?
Yeah, I heard them.
Yeah,
it's good stuff.
Good stuff.
And then man. he did what the hell was it called? I think he was on that Nader Sadiq project too. I think that was Tucker.
I don't know that. I'm not familiar with that.
Oh, I'll have to send it to you. It's like this. I think he's Egyptian. His name. I think his name is Nader Sadiq, or I could be wrong about that. That one. Don't quote me on that. But it's just one Egyptian guitar player guy, and he writes this like crazy death metal music. And his bands are usually super groups. So like they've had Blasphemer from Mayhem fame in his project, and I think Steve Tucker did vocals and. But yeah, I'll send you some stuff. You can check it out and see what you think. But yeah, Tucker, I mean, iconic voice, powerful voice. You know, I definitely approve of him. You know, doing metal music. Wasn't the biggest fan of the most recent Morbid Angel that they did. I thought the album was just okay, but definitely Gateways to Annihilation is still going to be like it ages very well for me.
I just listened to it a few days ago. Actually, it's fucking
Oh
amazing. You know.
yeah, dude. I mean like just that opening with like the locust or
Oh
whatever,
yeah, yeah.
the crickets. Yeah, yeah. That's so cool, man. Yeah, that whole album is great. I mean, I could do a whole podcast just on that fucking album. Listen to it so many goddamn times.
And that riff is so brooding too. You know,
Yeah. Dun, 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 dun.
they got like the fucking 7 strings and it's all brutal
Yeah.
sound. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
and that's something in Redemption too, like the
yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
man, yeah,
Absolutely.
so good.
Yeah. There was like a weird period where it's 7 string guitars and it's like it's not new metal at all, but I mean, but there was like an influence of groove that hit a lot of death metal around the time that record came out, which I thought was cool.
And another thing that doesn't get, I mean, it's probably been discussed 1,000 times. That's why it doesn't get brought up much anymore. But like Trey's solos, they just like propel you into outer space. They're just laden with like reverb and delay, and they're just, there's not really anything else like it out there. I mean, there might be copycats of it, but there's no one can pull it off the same way. The solos are just, they almost don't even belong in the song, but somehow it works. Like, it's crazy. Like the whole thing is just awesome. Absolutely.
Yeah, Morbid Angel is my favorite death metal band of all time, I have to say.
That's a good one.
Yeah,
good one
I mean, the playing is great, the image, like the subject matter of the songs, and also I've always felt like Morbid, especially in the early period, was almost like a death metal Black Flag. Like there was like the guitar player was like the visionary, and he was like obsessively, like insanely obsessive about the music, and his solos were completely unique, similar to Greg Ginn.
Yeah, very much like Ginn. Yeah, and and same with Sandoval too. Like I remember hearing a story about Sandoval one time, and he would like show up to band practice earlier in the day, and he would just play until he would literally like just pass out. He would just play until he couldn't fucking play anymore. He'd just pass out in the band room like in a pool of sweat. And then the band would show up, and then he'd just wake up, sit back behind the drums, and then do the whole set. Like, I mean, you're just talking like a different type of dedication that those kind of guys had.
Yeah. I mean, actually, Rutan was telling me when he joined the band, he had to catch on to that work ethic. I mean, Eric is a very, very disciplined guy. But he was telling me when he joined Morbid Angel, like they were already like in full stride with what they were doing, and he learned a lot about like work ethic and discipline and stuff from that band.
Yeah, I can only imagine. I wouldn't. I mean, I wouldn't even be offered that job, but that'd be a tough gig to do for sure. I can only imagine.
Yeah. Well, actually, I want to talk about the other stuff you're working on. Like you were talking about the this concept that you have for doing, like a post-punk influence thing. But what I find most interesting about that is that I'm not expecting you to make a record or demo or whatever that sounds like Joy Division or something like that. But it's going to sound different than that. I'm hoping at least that it's people always have. These guys in bands, like they have the band they do, and then there's like, oh, here's my electronic project or my dance project, and it's just kind of like, I'm trying, how should I say this? Like, it's just kind of going through the numbers of what they think it's supposed to sound like, and they just basically do a cover band that's original material, you know what I mean? And it's like, okay, this is like my post-punk band, but it sounds like doesn't really sound original. I suspect that when you create this stuff, it's not going to be just like you playing this style of music. It's going to be like you filtering through all the stuff that you have done before, like this angle on music. You know what I mean?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, at least I hope that's how it comes across. Like like I mentioned, my background is in metal, and so I don't already have that. I'm not running my guitar through those filters as it stands right now. And albeit like I am a fan of post punk and quote unquote goth music, it's not the type of music I listen to all the time. And so you know I might have some I have some inspirational bands that I listen to for sure, but I don't think they're the same kind of bands that most people listen to. For instance, like one of my favorite post-punk bands is this band called the Gentry. They're from the Netherlands, and not a lot of people know who they are. They had like maybe a couple albums. My favorite of theirs is this album called Solitude, but it's not like um, it's not the same kind of like Bauhausy, stuff like it's not. And I just like that sort of more. I like that aesthetic. I like taking a break from intense music and having something that's like dark and like mournful
Yeah,
sounding.
yeah.
And that's yeah. So yeah, that's the overall, like that's the real, if there is any direction, that's the direction. But
Well,
there's no real
they're a pretty
band.
obscure band, man. That's like mid '80s or something like that. The Gentry.
Yeah. Do you know them?
Yeah, I heard of them.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
Yeah. They're mid 80s, exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean that's
Um,
like a reach. Like, how'd you find out about them? Like, is that just from checking stuff out online and stuff?
No, so when I was in California, I worked for a printing company for like 6 years, and one of the things that we printed was this zine called Forced Exposure.
Oh
I don't
yeah,
know if you're
totally,
familiar.
dude. Yeah, that's a
Okay,
classic scene, man.
uh, yeah, so we printed Forced Exposure, so I would always steal one whenever I would print them, and then I would just go through them at night, like when I would get off of work, and I would just go through and like anything that I like hadn't heard of, I would just look it up. And the Gentry was being reissued. That Solitude album was being reissued by Force Exposure, and so I found them. I found them there. I found a lot of a lot of cool like obscure stuff that I'd never heard of. I found in Force Exposure.
Yeah, it was a great magazine, man. There was another magazine called Propaganda, which I've talked about a bunch on this podcast. Have you heard of that?
I have heard of it. Yeah, I have never read it, but I do know of its existence.
I used to work at a warehouse, like a record store, like a record store chain in New England when I lived in Boston. I used to work in a warehouse for this record store
Hmm.
chain called Newbury Comics. And
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's like, pretty big chain. It's like a lifestyle type of thing these days. But back in the day, they were like, actually, they had great buyers. Everything that they had was like pretty, pretty legit. You can get all the obscure stuff, you get popular stuff. Twin Peaks was huge. So they had like, Twin Peaks calendars and books and all that stuff.
Right.
And they carried Propaganda magazine, and that was like I would always grab the same thing. You get like 50% discount. So I would grab whenever the new issues came out. I have a whole bunch of them, and that was that and Forced Exposure, because I read that too back then, and that was like all about like post punk and goth and industrial stuff, especially Propaganda. It was like the design was really cool. It was like black and white, and it was the first place that I heard like Fields of the Nephilim, Death in June, uh, Specimen, like stuff like that.
Right.
There would always be something about like Throbbing Gristle or Coil would be in there, and
Right.
there was always something about someone that was associated with them. There was always an article about them in there. And the funny thing about it is, there also was they featured Soundgarden in there, and that was
Okay.
kind of how I found out about Soundgarden, was like in a goth industrial magazine. So yeah,
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah, I love, I'm not going to get all nostalgic and say I miss those days, because, I mean, you have the fucking internet now. But it's nice to have it all in one place. And it's nice to be, I like the concept of this, like, all these different things being recommended to you in this one place. You know, it's kind of hard to filter through things like these days. Like, if you go to like Metal and Encyclopedia, I mean, if you just click the letter A, there's like over like 600 pages of A. I mean, there's just no way to go through all those bands. I mean, you could, I'm sure, but it's nice like when someone does the little bit of the legwork for you, and it's like, this is what you need to check out. Check this fucking weird ass fucking post punk band from the Netherlands. Check out this. Check out Genesis P. Orage and fucking Throb and Gristle. Like, it's nice that people did that. For a long time, and I'm thankful for that, because definitely, I mean, that's really how I get most of my music. I mean, with the exception of Spotify doing its like recommended for you, I don't spend a whole lot of time like looking for new artists. So either I'll get hit something through you or through Jackie, or yeah. Otherwise, a lot of stuff goes by the wayside these days. But when I was younger, I was so curious and inquisitive, and I knew that I felt it. There was like a little, like, I don't know what the word is, but like it felt kind of cool, like knowing the shit that other people didn't know, and it's like it was neat to like stumble across something that, like, there's a group of people that really like this thing, but like no one else has heard of it. Like, I don't know, it's just kind of fun, and I definitely do. I don't know if I still get that excitement from time to time, but I don't get it in the same way, and I definitely don't get it as often these days.
Yeah, actually, you know what? Into the Necrosphere is that's a good resource for me too. I found out about so many bands like just from listening to that show.
Yeah, you've mentioned it before, and I'll echo what you said about Jackie. Like, I don't know how he retains all that knowledge about all that stuff, and it's definitely not like he's got it. I mean, I'm sure he's got some like liner notes that he follows when he's like doing his podcast. But if you bring up anything to that guy just on a whim, he'll be like, "Oh yeah, you mean like that song that has this lyric in it?" I'm like, "How the fuck do you do this?" Like his brain is just like endless when it comes to like the being able to archive all this metal. Man, it's very impressive to me. It's very impressive.
Yeah, he kind of turned me on to a lot of those Australian bands. Like I knew about Psychroptic because our guitar player Todd plays bass for Psychroptic.
Okay.
So I was aware of them and the whole Dave Haley drumming phenomenon. But
Mm-hmm.
I found out about Werewolves from Jackie. I found out about a lot of those bands, but that was the entry point, Werewolves, and then I got into Ruins. The Amenta was another thing that fits
they're
within.
awesome.
Yeah, they're amazing. They're like one of my favorite bands, really. And the Australians, they have this fucking vibe, man, which I'm just so, and I've always been a fan of a lot of music from that region, like even going all the way back to like the Birthday Party and, Beasts of Bourbon, not metal bands.
Rose Tattoo.
Yeah, Rose Tattoo, AC/DC,
Right.
and, and then, Destroyer 666 and bands like that. But now there's like this group of guys that are just making some of the best extreme music ever,
Yeah, they're killing it, and I mean, absolutely killing it. And we just mentioned the Amenta. Like, I mean, that Revelator album is just fantastic. I was listening to that last week, and like, I'm still not tired of it yet, and I'm still finding little things in that album that I didn't hear like the time before I was into it. And just I kind of like equate it to like Mr. Bungle meets a fucking metal band, like old Mr. Bungle, like California era Mr. Bungle. Just because it's just all over the place, and is with the vocals and with the music, and it's phenomenal. And and everything that's coming, not just them, of course, everybody that's coming out with music from there. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe there's something in the water,
Yeah, who knows, man? Or the lack of water, maybe.
Or lack of water. Yeah, you get heat stroke long enough, you start writing fucking good fucking metal.
Yeah. But do you with Quell, like, do you ever, has there ever been the concept of playing live and putting together a lineup for that band? I think we talked about this a little bit, but it always comes back, and I'm like, well, now that you're in the States, maybe you can put a performing band together.
I would like to. Yeah, I mean, it's been years since I've played live, and you know, I do miss it. And I used to play live all the time. I never like really got anywhere with it, but used to do tours and play local shows a lot, and I really do enjoy it. And I would like to do something with Quell. It's been for the time being, it's been more of like just a creative outlet for me. But you know, it kind of just at first when I was doing Quell, I didn't really think anything of it. I didn't think anybody was even going to enjoy it or pay any mind to it. But it does seem I've been getting positive feedback from this, everything I've been putting out, and the people who do listen to it are very encouraging and very kind, and tell me to keep going and keep doing stuff. So yeah, the thing is, like, in this area, there's really no demand for any kind of shows and stuff like that. But if I could put something together, and it would take some work, because I would want to play, probably get up to Baltimore, get up to Philly, play shows up there and stuff. So it would take some work, and I haven't done that kind of legwork in a long time. So it would be a hurdle for me. But I have been thinking about it now that I'm back, and I'm trying to figure out what I want to do next in life. And there has been the thoughts of maybe one day returning to Stockholm, but I'm not 100% sure about that either. And in the meantime, I'm gonna just kind of taking everything like day by day. But yes, I would like to play live. I have a good friend of mine who is a drummer, who I've drummed with in the past, and he's been in some bands of note as well. And so the two of us have played together for many, many years, so it would be pretty easy to get him on board. And I would have to figure out a few things, and I would have to tab everything out too, which is no big deal, but it's probably something I need to do anyway. Like I was talking about, I don't play these songs very often, so it would probably be beneficial for me to actually tab all this stuff out in case I get like a fucking head injury or something and I can't remember how to play guitar anymore or something. But yeah, I would like to do that, and I know that's probably one of the things that that this project is missing is getting out that kind of exposure playing live, because I do what I can on social media and doing these podcasts, and I've been fortunate that I have had I've been able to reach out to people from all over the world and accrue a little bit of a fan base, but playing live, that's where it's at, and more so than anything else, like I do just kind of miss it, and I was even considering for a little while just like trying to join somebody else's band when I was out there. When I was out there in Stockholm, I I won't say for who, but I did do an audition for a fairly big death metal band out there, and nothing ever amounted to anything, but it was a thought of mine, just because I was kind of getting bored just sitting around and just you do all this work, and you get this final product, and it's really cool. It's awesome. I mean, there's nothing I like better than being finished with an album and being able to hold it in my hands. But then it just kind of dies there in a sense, other than doing these podcasts and stuff. It just doesn't go anywhere, and it's kind of a shame, because I think that I think a lot of these songs translate really well live, because I write them in that sense. Like on the most recent one, The Cult is Dead, there's a few guitar layering in some of the songs, but for the most part, it's just 2 guitar tracks. So all of it's really recreatable live, and it would be fun to play live, I think, because it's not overly complicated by any means. So yeah, we'll see what happens. I really do. I really have been putting a lot of thought into that. Something I think about quite often.
Yeah, and that was one of the things. Like the songs feel like they have a live feel to them. I mean, sometimes you listen to like a one man project, and it doesn't seem like it's even ever going to doesn't lend itself to the live setting. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I always go back to Leviathan. Like, Leviathan doesn't seem like a band that would ever play live. You know what I mean?
It'd be difficult too with like there's a lot of moving parts in those
Yeah,
songs.
yeah, exactly. Like there's just like an atmosphere that's it's just this otherworldly thing that he can do within the studio that I don't think would ever translate to a live setting. But with Quell, it sounds like a band that tours. It has like a characteristic that would translate well to like a venue, or on the road or something like that.
I've always lended myself as a more of a songwriter kind of guy. I've never been much for like writing solos and stuff like that. I've always been more on the rhythmic side of things, the groovier side of things.
Yeah.
And I write that way. I write in that way that you would if you were jamming with some guys in a band room trying to create songs that you could take out live. So I've never really lost that. And so it just translates over to me doing all the parts instead of having four people doing all the parts. But yeah, I like that, and I guess in the back of my mind, I kind of maybe always, had hoped that maybe one day, I could take it out again. It's always been like I don't talk about this too much, but like I have, everyone has like little dreams and stuff like that, and I've always had like a dream of like playing a really big festival. And doing like a cool tour. Like I've done some small stuff with some. I've done a couple tours with like unsigned bands, and and I had a band out here in Virginia, and then we did some opening acts at that Jack's nightclub for some bigger name bands and stuff.
Yeah.
But I never really got to that. I never scratched that one itch that I was always trying to scratch. And I'm 34 now, so it's probably time to start thinking about doing that if I'm going to do it at all. I mean, never say never. I could fucking do it when I'm 60 if my body will still hold up to it. But it'd be a good time to do it, if I could. So, yeah, I mean, I definitely really stoked on being able to be able to like write and that it's being well received and that the albums are turning out pretty good. But I definitely haven't accomplished everything that I want to accomplish in music. Like if I was to hang it up right now, I would have regrets that I didn't do a few other things, or at least didn't try to do a few other things.
Oh, there you go,
and
man.
Namely being live.
Yeah, it's a goal. This should be a goal, I think. I encourage this, man. I think it'd be great,
Well, I'm gonna work towards it then. I've been making some changes in life, positive changes. So I'll put that on the list as well. I'll start shooting for that.
Hell yeah.
When I get this next EP idea worked out, and then yeah. But I'll simultaneously start working on that. And maybe I can pick your brain, for resources or information if I need to.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, I'm around, and now is a good time to think about playing live because, like, things are, depending on what part of the country you're in, things are pretty normal right now.
Yeah.
And the live world is kind of happening. So,
Absolutely. Especially like everybody's been all pent up, locked down for fucking 2 years, so everyone's probably pretty stoked to get out and see anything at this point, even if it is a fucking black metal band.
Yeah, I mean when Under Sullen Skies came out, it was in the height of the pandemic, man. So it was similar to that, where it's like, oh great, we have a record, cool, there it is, like
right,
there was no
now what,
there was no tour, there was nothing. Like we did these like fucking filmed live sets, but that's like jerking off or something like that, man. It's like it's fun, but it's kind of unsatisfying, really, And,
yeah, after a while, you're just like, what's the fucking point?
Yeah,
Yeah, right.
And I think those made me like more depressed than anything. It was cool, but ultimately I was very depressed, I think, afterwards, because even getting ready to shoot those, like there was one in particular where we traveled to where the location was where we shot it. It was like this loft space down in South Jersey. And the whole thing felt like a show. Like we went to the space, we had the van, we loaded everything in the van, we drove, a few miles, like an hour or whatever. And I was like, oh, it feels like we're going to a gig, but we weren't. We were just going into this
Yeah.
like, fucking room.
Yeah, man. And I mean, I can only imagine, what it's like, especially when you're really proud of something you just fucking created and you want to share it with the world. And it's like the world tells you, like, sorry, fucking sit and spin, but, can't do anything.
Yeah, it's kind of a
Yeah.
trip because we just did this East Coast run of dates, and a lot of that was the first time that we played a lot of those songs in front of people. And
And how was the response? Was it good?
yeah, definitely. I mean, it's
Awesome.
funny. We're in like a little bit of a time warp right now because we're talking right now, I'm getting ready to leave for this other tour with Origin and Abysmal Dawn, and by the time this episode airs, I will be back from that tour. So we're in this like weird time warp right now, but
Yeah.
so I'm hoping that goes well. But yeah, it's weird to have this record come out like almost 2 years ago, and now it's like we're finally performing songs in front of people with those tracks.
I wanted to ask you a question about the most recent album
Yeah,
because I know you're a huge Dwid Hellion fan.
yeah,
And
yeah.
was that the first time? Is that the first time you had worked with him?
Yeah, that's the only time we ever did anything together creatively. Like I've like interviewed him before, and he was on Metal Matters a couple times.
Yeah, I remember those episodes.
Yeah, and we stay in touch. And interesting guy, definitely.
Was that like was that kind of like a fucking notch in the belt moment for you to get him on a track? Is that something you wanted to do for a long time, or did it just kind of come to be that like it worked out that way?
No, I definitely. The thing is that song, "The Hunger," is obviously an homage to Samhain and Danzig. You know,
Yeah,
I think it's obvious. You know what I mean? That it's
I
there's
hear
like
the influence.
it's like a
Yeah.
very heavy duty Danzig thing going on with the riffs, and I know that Dwid is a huge Samhain fan specifically. I mean, even the Integrity Skull, though that
Mhm.
comes from a Blood a Tale, which is like a
It was a
comic book. Yeah,
comic book. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
But it kind of mirrors Danzig and his skull, which came from
Right.
like Quasar, or like an old Marvel comic. That
Gotcha.
yeah, Christar. That skull is in the
Hmm.
Christar comic book, and yeah, the whole thing. And I was just like, I wrote the lyrics, and I was like, man, it'd be sick to have like Dwid do this like weird this chorus part. So I sent him the song and the lyrics I'd written. I was like, you want to do this? He's like, yeah. And then like literally like a week later, he sent me all these tracks. Like
That's
we
rad.
hadn't even properly recorded the song yet. Like it was a demo, but we use click track, so everything lines up from the demo to the final version of the song.
Right.
So
Oh,
yeah,
that's super cool. Yeah, I mean, it turned out great, but I was just I was always curious about that because I know you're a big fan of his. So
what really put the bee in my bonnet with this one was are you familiar with the band Gehenna?
yeah, the black metal band.
Well, the hardcore band Gehenna.
Oh, the hardcore. Yeah, okay, yes, them too. Yes.
Yeah, from LA. They
Yeah.
have a song called The Tormentor. Okay.
Okay.
And Dwid does vocals on that song too. And there was just something about his voice as like a backup singer.
Hmm.
And the song The Tormentor is kind of like a mid-tempo, like kind of chuggy like song. And I was like, yeah, it'd be cool to like, I don't know. Just he has such a distinctive voice too.
He does. He's got that voice that sounds like he's getting ready to like pop a vein in his forehead.
Yeah. Yeah,
When he does
absolutely.
his screams. Yeah, it's great. Well, that's awesome. Yeah, that was a little bit of information I was curious about.
Yeah, Integrity's playing out here in Jersey like in another month or so. There's
Oh, nice.
they're playing with a municipal waste at this very, very small venue, like about 15 minutes from here. And I'm probably going to go. I think I'll be home. I'm not sure. I got to look at the date, but I'm pretty sure that I'm going to be back for this tour.
I mean, you definitely got to go if you're around for sure.
Yeah, no, absolutely, 100%, man. And it's going to be wild seeing Municipal Waste and those guys in this place because it's only like you could probably fit like 70 people in it.
Yeah, I saw them with Toxic Holocaust one time, which is like they're same style of music, and that was at one of the Maryland Death Fest one year, and that was a wild show. That was definitely a wild show for sure. Yeah, people are losing their minds for that, man.
Yeah, MDF.
It's good.
Is fun.
Solid. Yeah, it's a fun time for sure. It's like fun metal. You really get into it, and like people are just crowd surfing, and just everyone's like just sweating. It's a good time. Unlike black metal shows where guys are just standing there fucking staring at the band the whole time.
Yeah. Actually, some of the bigger shows people move around. Like when I saw Mayhem like about a month ago. There are people moving around up front.
I don't know if you've experienced this in your touring, but like I've noticed a big difference between European crowds and American crowds. And in Europe, they don't mosh very often. In fact, they kind of look at you weird if you try to start mosh pits and stuff, which I have been on the receiving end of that, trying to start mosh pits. Just because, like, I'm the annoying American, I guess. But
yeah, I have like a love-hate relationship with Europeans, man. It's like,
yeah.
I don't know, man. It's like I like the UK. I like Brits. Brits are cool. They're like Americans kind of in some ways,
Right.
but also very different too in other ways.
For sure.
But if you compare a Brit to like a German,
it's like night and day.
We're more like we're Americans and Brits are more like each other than we're either one of us are like Germans.
For sure. Yeah. I know what you're saying there. Yeah.
I don't want to offend anyone because I have.
No, I don't think you are.
The only reason why I don't want to offend anyone is one of my best friends is German, so Ralph's German. I don't want
Ralph.
I don't want to offend him, but
he'll probably back you up on that.
He will. He makes fun of Germans all the time. So
yeah, of course. They're self-aware, of course. Just like we're self-aware. We know we're fucking over the top. When it comes to shit.
But like the thing I love about Germans though is like when you play there, they're like, oh, you were much better last time, or this patch, I don't like the shape of the patch that you have. I prefer the round ones. That was an actual conversation I had in Potsdam, I think.
That's amazing.
With a dude, and then he was like very focused on the configuration of the patches that we had.
I think at least you know where you stand. Like you can't fault them for the honesty. At least that's nice.
Yeah, when I first started touring over in Europe, I was always the Germans would always talk about how American bands are terrible, and all this stuff, and how that was during the explosion of all the like Scandinavian D-beat stuff was like really big. But this one guy had, he was going off on Americans and how unoriginal they are. But then like this dude had like a tragedy patch in it from Ashes Rise, like hat, and
yeah, I gotcha.
Yeah. Like, I'm like, you don't exist without American bands. Like that's the thing I was like laughing at the guy. I'm like, bro, like you don't exist without any of these bands,
Yeah, it's kind of true,
Yeah,
kind of true. I have to agree with you there.
Right. So one of the things we like to do on Everything Went Black is we love doing these Spotify playlists. I don't know if you've checked any of these out, but Ralph and I are really keen on putting these things together.
Yep. And
so
I have, yes.
We've asked you to come up with your playlist. So this is going to be in the show notes. If you go to the website, the Everything Went Black Media website, the show notes for this episode, that's where we embed all of the playlists. People have asked because, keep in mind, not everyone finds the episode through the website, especially these days. So if you found this just like not by going to the website, you go to the website, and you will find all these playlists in the show notes. Or you can just follow me on Spotify, and then you have access to all the stuff that we're putting together. So So let's give a rundown on the stuff that you got. You got a bunch of really cool stuff. Let's see. Obviously, I've listened to most of these bands you have on here. There is one band that I'm not aware of, Silencer.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, sort of I guess like the idea I had for this playlist was just, and like, let me just start off by saying I know there's tons and tons of bands that I didn't cover, but I just wanted to stick to like 5, 6 bands just to keep it, just to kind of open up the doors to some people that maybe don't listen to more obscure black metal bands. And I really wanted to put a focus on interesting vocal style.
Okay.
So,
yeah.
I mean, musically, I also think that all these bands are fantastic. And I tried to pick some songs and put them in the playlist that I think showcase both really talented musicianship, but also showcases the range that these vocalists have. And I was sort of, as we were talking, there's a few metal podcasts out there, and I've listened to quite a few different ones, and most of them, outside of you guys, you and Jackie, they go through all of like the typical ones that everyone expects them to go through. You got your Mayhems and your Emperors and Immortals and all this kind of stuff. And it seems though in like conversation, a lot of times some really interesting acts just sort of get like tossed to the wayside and don't really get brought up or discussed that often in conversation. And I think that these bands that I'm going to mention tonight definitely deserve to be explored a bit more. And if people don't listen to them, should listen to them and give them a chance. And so we were talking already about this, so I guess we can just go ahead and start off with Leviathan. Leviathan, it's this one-man metal band started by Jeff Whitehead out of California. I think he started in '98, if I remember correctly. Jeff Whitehead's also done some stuff with the band Twilight, and I think he's even contributed some stuff to the band Sun. And he also has a really interesting, more slow kind of atmospheric project called Lurker of Chalice as well, which you mentioned.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good place to start. So, I mean, you listen to pretty much all of their stuff. So what's your take on Leviathan?
I think Leviathan is probably the quintessential USBM band, actually. You know what I mean? Like, I think that, well, maybe not chronologically, because like there was obviously bands like, like Hemlock that was out there in the early '90s, and Vaughn, Vaughn
right.
is like an old, very, very obscure, well, not so much anymore. Everyone talks about him now, but I feel like Leviathan is like the quintessential modern U.S. black metal band. Because I feel like the American sound is very related to like what, the North American sound is definitely very much descended from the stuff that he's done in all of his records. And I think that mixture of traditional black metal with like, and you can, you hear stuff like Neurosis and you hear like Bauhaus and you hear all this other stuff in Leviathan. And I think that kind of typifies what a lot of bands in the United States are trying to do, or North America are trying to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And he was definitely, ahead of the game when it comes to all that. And I think, just, speaking about his vocal range in particular, he does, everything from, screaming to spoken word to like chanting, and he has all kinds of different, takes on how he processes his vocals too. Some of the songs have like lo-fi distortion filters on them, some of them, and I think, he's one of those artists that I'm definitely like impressed by, being as I'm also a one-man metal guy.
Yeah.
The fact that he does all this himself, and unlike me, also plays the drums, and plays the drums very well, if you ask me. I mean, maybe he's not like some Dave Lombardo or someone like that, but he's still a fantastic drummer, and he definitely gets what he needs to get across with his music, and I like the range, So I picked two songs off of two different albums for the playlist, and they're the two albums that I think really showcase his range as far as what he's capable of doing. So one of the songs comes off of I believe it's the first album, the 10th sub-level of Suicide.
Yeah.
And that's definitely more lo-fi, what people might be more familiar with when it comes to black metal, sort of that Scandinavian sound when it comes to production value. And then A Massive Conspiracy Against All Life. And I think that album shows great growth from the aforementioned album and has a lot more creativity in it, where 10th sublevel of Suicide is very straightforward, traditional in a lot of ways. It does have some tangents it goes down, but Massive Conspiracy Against All Life, it has elements of synth, it has elements of goth, it has elements of like black metal, and it's just, but it's all, I think it's all put together very well, and yeah, that's why I chose those two albums to showcase on the playlist, because I definitely think he's got an impressive range, and and this is what this whole list is going to be about, is just these underrated or underappreciated bands that have put a lot of effort into their craft, and I don't think get the same recognition, and that I think they should. So yeah, what about you? How do you feel about those two albums?
I love all of his records, honestly, but I feel like Massive Conspiracy was. I remember exactly where I was when I heard this record. That's the kind of record it is for me. I was with Dave Whitty in Richmond, Virginia, driving into a mall parking lot to go to a Guitar Center, and he played me this record because he already had a copy of it before it came out, because his ex was really good friends with Jeff, and I guess Dave met him through her, and he had a copy of this record, and we were listening to it while we were driving around, and I was like, man, the first thing that hit me was just the sound, like sonically, how much more advanced it was than everything else,
Mm-hmm.
But it really was like a culmination of all the demos into this one thing and this one very massive statement that he made. And the thing I've always loved about Leviathan and Jeff Whitehead's work in general with music is that it's black metal, but there's no, like, it's not satanic, it's not pagan or anything, but it's all that stuff. And also there's just like this existential brooding darkness to all of the music, and
Yeah.
I relate more to that than, the overt like satanic stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I 100% agree. Like, albeit I do love listening to that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's difficult to relate to it when it doesn't really, it's not my world. And his honesty almost is I think a good word to describe, the music that he does, because I feel it's very personal to him, and it's relatable to me, because it's something that I think if you get into it and you really like feel this sort of angst, the anguish and pain that Jeff's trying to portray in this music, it's something that we can all relate to, on some primal level, and that to me, really stands out as far as the style of lyrics and music that I think he's trying to portray.
Also, the title of the record is very, very close to the Thomas Ligotti work, "The Conspiracy Against the Human Race."
Oh yeah.
And it's like, and it's funny. Like, I always was wondering if I mean, a lot of the same emotions that you get from reading a Thomas Ligotti short story are very much in the music of Leviathan in some ways.
Yeah, it's definitely got that. It has that, that sort of existential, horror that you get from Ligotti or you get from Lovecraft. I definitely, and even with the artwork too, on things like Horacle or Massive Conspiracy Against All Life, like I think you get like, it's that unknowable horror sort of um, vibe, I guess is the best word I can come up with. Yeah.
You,
But
what's a cool Leviathan record is that silhouette of it's like the instrumental
so the
record.
black, yeah.
I forgot the
I do.
title of it though.
I can't remember even. My phone's not with me at the moment. But yeah, no, I know what you're talking about. I know the instrumental. And yeah, and just another thing too for people who are listening, Leviathan, like Mike had mentioned already, a lot of the stuff that are in these quote unquote albums and EPs, a lot of them are from all over the place. So when you're listening to stuff and you like maybe one song has a certain quality to it, and then another one will have maybe a lesser quality to it. Just know that that's because Jeff's been writing forever. He has 100+ songs, and a lot of these songs all get stuck together on certain compilations, and I think that's really interesting too, that he doesn't rewrite things, but he just goes ahead and just puts it all together. And I think that's kind of neat.
Yeah.
Um,
That record was
so
called
yeah,
A Silhouette in Splinters.
Silhouette and Splinters. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good stuff. Everything's good by them. I highly recommend this band or this one man metal band. If you don't know it, check out the playlist. I think there's the two songs that are featured there are a good introduction to this, and I think they're accessible and they show the range. And if you like it, just keep on listening to it because there's some really interesting music in there, and you've got no shortage of material to listen to. So definitely give it a chance. I say. So so that's Leviathan, Jeff Whitehead. The next one I was going to mention, we can go into Silencer.
Sure. Yeah.
So
I never heard them before.
yeah, so Silencer is this one album project. They're from Stockholm, Sweden. Excuse me. And they wrote this album and recorded this album in 2001. It's just two guys that do this album. And then I think they have some guest musicians that come in and fill in all the parts. But what really stands out to me about this album, and if you listen to it, are the vocals again. And these vocals borderline on unlistenable. And I'll be completely honest here right now. The very first time I heard Silencer, I did not like it. It was very much in the same way that when I first heard King Diamond, I didn't like it either. And after being pushed by my peers to continue listening to this and appreciate what was actually going on as a whole, the album started to grow on me, and more so, and to the point where now I like this album quite a lot. Musically, I think the album is very a wide array of different styles. You've got everything from traditional black metal, you've got acoustic piano, acoustic guitar, some dark synthy stuff on there, and the style kind of ranges all over the place. There's some more maybe like black and roll. I don't really like that term, but kind of like rock and rolly tempos mixed in with the traditional black metal and everything else. But the vocalist, his name is Natram, which is a Swedish folklore creature, an ancient folklore creature, and it's a creature that's buried in unholy ground, or a creature that commits suicide.
Oh wow.
Yeah. And it's very. This is this band, and a lot of these bands, at least 3 of these bands on this list, they're gonna be in the genre of depressive, suicidal black metal. I don't really care for this term too much because I don't like advocating this sort of stuff, but it is what it is. This is the style of music that this is the genre that this style of music has been coined. And the music in Silencer's case is very much the vocalist in Silencer's case is very much trying to portray the feeling of agony and pain. So the vocal style goes from these horrendous wails and screeches to everything from choking and vomiting noises, low gutturals, and then your typical black metal screams. And it's alleged that the singer Natram, while recording these vocals, was in the recording booth cutting himself while he was recording these vocals to increase his agony, put more pain on him. And there are pictures of him supposedly after he finished recording this album. But there's a lot of mystery around this band. They never went on to do anything else. They never played live. This album, Death Pierce Me, just sort of came and went. And people in the underground scene know about it. But again, it's one of these albums that I don't think gets talked about enough. And I think it's very interesting. What did you take from listening to some of this?
Well, I'm intrigued by it now. I mean, I thought it was interesting, and it reminded me a little bit of like Bethlehem, I guess, is the thing that comes to mind, just because of the intensity of the vocal delivery on the two silencer tracks. I need to go and absorb the entire record, I think. You know what I mean? But I was really, really. It was very unique and very intriguing to me. So I'm definitely gonna dig into their material more.
Yeah, great. I'm glad to hear that. That's the whole point of this. I just want people to get exposed to this kind of stuff. And the two songs that I put on the playlist, in my opinion, showcase the vocal range of Natram, and you just get the whole picture out of those two. And if you like those two, I definitely say just dive into it. It's one album, and it's a special thing. You're never going to get another one. There's not going to ever be. I don't even think there's been any plans or talks of this ever being reunited or anything. I think it was just a project that these two guys did at a time in their lives, and then that's just been it from then on out. So definitely really cool. It's called Death Pierce Me by Silencer. Definitely recommend that. Definitely check that out. And since you just brought it up, the next one I want to talk about is the band Bethlehem. But I want to be specific here that I want to only talk about the second album, Dictus Te Nakare, and the 2004 EP Alles Tot. And the reason I want to talk about just these two things is because there's a vocalist in particular. His name is Rainier Landman. And this guy, much like the vocalist on Silencer, but predating the guy from Silencer by 5 years or more, is an absolute lunatic. And I think you can attest to that, right?
Yeah. There's definitely, he's a lot of folklore around that guy, for sure.
And his singing style is just absolutely unhinged. I mean, he's just like, when you listen, when you see something or you listen to something that's just like your brain can't process it, so you just start laughing. That was my first take of Bethlehem when I first heard it. Like, I wasn't laughing because I thought it was funny. I was just like, I couldn't process everything that this guy was doing in a song, and I still get that way. I still get a smile on my face when I listen to these two releases by Bethlehem.
Yeah, and he literally was like mentally disturbed too. Like he had like mental like issues for sure.
Yeah. But it created some really, really awesome lyrical content. And again, like Silencer, there's like these wails of just agony that just come out of it seems like just the guy's screaming from his his soul and pain, and he'll string like long strings of lyrics together over slow parts that just everything the guy does is just against the rules. There's nothing off limits for Rainier, in my opinion. I think he flies by the beat of a different drum. He goes by the beat of a different drum, and the album Dictus Te Nakare is the album that I feature on the playlist. I've got 2 songs off of that album. And again, same thing as I said before, showcases some good musicianship, but it also showcases, I think, a good example of the range that he has. And it's just another one of those things that you're not going to get another one. No, if other people were to do it, it would just sound. People would just compare it to Rainier. It'd be like, oh, that's like Rainier, and that's what makes this vocalist in particular one of my favorites on this list, because he really is truly like unique and for this style of music, his mental illness and his unhingedness. I don't know if that's a word, but unhinged, lyrical style really just fits. And makes the music that would otherwise be good music, don't get me wrong, but would be more just another black metal band with this added touch of his vocal style really elevates this particular album. And you can hear on the later Bethlehem albums that the vocalist Oni Lar, he definitely tries to emulate some of the stuff that Rainier does, and it just kind of falls short. It's really, in my opinion, it falls short. Now, other people might like it, and if you do, that's great. And I think the band as a whole is definitely worth people's attention. But I would really encourage people to go and check out the Dictus Te Nakare, and you can see that on Spotify. Then there's the 2004 EP Alles Tot, and that you can only find on like YouTube and maybe some other like websites.
Yeah.
But it is out there. But you have to do a little bit of searching to find it. But that's half the fun, going out there and trying to find it. Yeah. So
some of the later
definitely
stuff
recommend that.
I definitely liked the later stuff too. Like I think Dark Metal is a cool record. Just the vocals they're different.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, and that's what I want to stress. That like I don't think this band is bad without the presence of Rainier, but the presence of him definitely adds a different flavor to the band for sure. And from Bethlehem, we'll actually go over to another band that actually has a tie-in to Bethlehem, because on one of the songs that I feature on the playlist actually features Rainier. So the band is a Now Nathrak. This is a band from Birmingham, England. And I know this band on this list, along with the next 2 bands that we'll talk about, are more well known, but I still don't think they come up in conversation very often. And I think that that's a shame, because this is also a band that's just 2 people. And they have gone to create, in my opinion, some of the most extreme metal that's ever been created. I mean, mixing elements of grindcore and death metal and black metal, and even with the vocal range ranging from just the highest, like almost like gonna blow your speakers screams, to low guttural singing, to even like singing high notes. And sorry, the vocalist in this band is a guy by the name of Dave Hunt, and his range is just impressive. I mean, the guy can sing very well, and in almost every single songs that they do, there's a wide array of different vocal techniques being used in every single song, and as well as the music itself. I mean, the music can be anything from industrial to grindcore to black metal to death metal, like I said, but it all blends really, really well. And the fact that it's just, the mastermind, like the brainchild, like just these 2 guys, is really impressive to me. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh yeah, they're fantastic, and like one of the best things about him is the vocals. I think on the track, definitely, yeah, and they're like they don't sound anything like this band, but they remind me of them only in the way that all of their stuff has such a variety of of influences. But there's I think they're Swedish, a band called Red Harvest.
I'm aware of them. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Now, a Red Harvest is not nearly as extreme as a Nala Thrak, but they'll take like death metal, industrial, and like post punk, and put it all together in a song, and it's like, and it works, and they do it so well, and it always sounds like them, it's not just like, oh yeah, here's our song that where we do blast beats or whatever, it's like very characteristic, like they have their own characteristic.
yeah. Agreed.
And that's how I feel about Donald Thrak.
Yeah, absolutely. And nothing feel like it all feels like everything sits in its appropriate place.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so yeah, I one of the songs. So the song "Toad," excuse me, German listeners, but "Toad Huet Ubel," which I believe translates to "Death Herds Evil." That song features Rainier Vanderman from Bethlehem on it, and I think it's just a fantastic song because Dave Hunt is also an unhinged individual when it comes to his vocal style, and the two of them together, it just works really, really well. And the song itself is just incredible. And one of the cool things that I always liked that they did in this song was that they panned each other's vocals left, right. So when they're sharing verse duties, you can have Dave Hunt in your left ear, you have Rainier in your right ear, going back and forth. So if you're listening on headphones or listening to like a surround sound situation, you get that side to side panning, and it just makes for a really cool experience, which I also really appreciate when bands do that. When there's there's mixing and then there's like putting thought into the mixing, and I really appreciate when bands do that. And that's a really great example of that. That's on the playlist. I also picked another song off of The Constellation of the Black Widow, which I think is where you start to get some of the singing mixed in with a lot of the screaming. And I want to, anybody who might be adverse to singing in metal, don't mistake this for like, something like Nevermore or some power metal shit. This is not that at all. It's it's melodic, but it definitely doesn't take away from the intensity of the music at all, in my opinion.
Yeah. That like I said, I think one of the strongest things about the band is the variety of vocals.
Yeah, absolutely. And I strongly urge, and people to listen to this band and share this band. And I hope, I mean, like I said, I know this band is more well known. They've done a lot of festivals and they've done touring circuits and stuff like that. But I still don't hear them mentioned often enough. And I think that they deserve to be mentioned more often. And then the next band that I have on this list is another band that definitely is more well known, but again, I don't think it's talked about enough, is the band Shining. Shining from Halmstad, Sweden. And the vocalist, if people have heard this band, then everyone's probably familiar with Nicholas Carforth. He's a character. I think he at times likes to channel some sort of like G.G. Allen-esque energy when he's live on stage. But I don't believe he's as crazy as G.G. Allen was. I think straight up G.G. Allen was a crazy person, whereas I think Nicholas Carforth is probably a little bit more together than he was. But the music of Shining, first off, is something that is not really brought up a lot in conversation, because the music is actually quite well written, and it's not just your straightforward traditional black metal. There's a lot of moving parts to Shining, and that's to do with a few really good songwriters in that band. Peter Hoos being one of them, one of the guitar players, and the vocals are also something that I think deserve to be discussed more often, because where Nicholas Carforth does do your sort of angry, like gravelly shouting style vocals in a lot of his songs, the guy also has incredible range. He can sing He does spoken words. He does do the wails from time to time. He has really good high screams, and I think he blends things really well when he does his vocal his vocal composition as well. What are your thoughts on Shining?
Oh
Like,
yeah, Shining are like they're kind of like the godfathers of that depressive, whatever they want to call it in some
right,
ways. Like when people say the depressive black metal, like they think of Shining. All right, what comes to mind for me at least is Shining.
for sure,
You know,
absolutely.
and the music definitely has like this kind of somber like texture to it.
And again, when we talk about this band has been around since 1996, but often doesn't get discussed when we're talking second wave, black metal bands. Where we get a lot of, you know, the Takes and bands such like this, but not a lot gets brought up about Shining, and I think that's a miss on a lot of these people who do documentaries or who do podcast episodes about that that movement of black metal, because I think they have an impressive career. And like I said, if you take a song like Quell Destructivity's Emissary, which is off of the third album Angst, and you've got this really like teeth gnashing style of vocals, like screaming vocals, mixed in with have some like low parts where you can just hear him like breathing heavily, and then just these like really like from the belly, just like yells, all blended together perfectly with really great musicianship over top of it. You've got breaks in the song that have some acoustic guitar, and then it gets back into like the more traditional black metal style. But then you can like take another song, like which is one of the songs that I have featured on the playlist, the song Om, which weirdly enough, the lyrics are actually all written in Norwegian. It's the only Norwegian song they do, but they are a Swedish band. That's not too weird. If you can speak Swedish, most people who can speak Swedish can speak and understand Norwegian and Danish. It's not odd, but it just stood out to me. But like that song in particular has a lot of singing and more like intricate guitars that almost harken a little bit of Isis to me, because there's some tappy parts that are very tappy and airy and like spacey. Yeah,
I guess
kind of
I
like
could see
something.
that. Yeah, I could see that.
Something like more along like the wavering radiant era of like Isis.
Right.
Yeah. And so just a really impressive range again. And often overlooked because of, and like a lot of these bands too, I didn't mention that earlier, but a lot of these bands, I think, the only like real thing that they get noticed for or brought up about is like the controversies surrounding these guys. And I mean, sure, that controversy's there, but I think often we get lost in controversy and we forget that this is still a fucking band that has like really good music. And I highly recommend Shining. It's one of my favorite black metal bands. And I put two songs off of the same album. It's an album called Klago Salmer. That translates to Lament Psalms. And I put those two on there just because I thought it, again, showcases a good range in Nicholas Carfor's vocal style. But I don't want people to get stuck on that album. Definitely do. If you like those two songs, you can go in either direction. Because that album starts off, I think that's their fourth album. So you can go back 3, or you can go forward to all the way up to their 10th or whatever they're at now. And I don't think you'll be disappointed. And I think especially if you not just appreciate like good vocals, but if you appreciate good songwriting, you're going to be in for a treat if you don't already listen to Shining.
Yeah, I back all that, man. They're definitely a band that should be on everyone's listening diet.
Definitely.
Well, speaking
All
of
right, and
controversy,
yeah. So last but not least, and speaking of controversy, and this is definitely a band that doesn't need any sort of promotion by any means, but I put it on the list because I really think that, again, we all need to sometimes practice separating the art from the artist, and it's a shame that unfortunately this individual gets glossed over often just because of the controversy surrounding him. And if you don't know who I'm talking about, that is a Mr. Varg Vikernes from Burzum. So Mike, I'll let you start because I'd love to hear what you have to say.
Well, yes, Varg, fuck it. Why even go into that? Everyone knows about what his deal is, like he was convicted of murder, like, he has like extreme racist ideologies, he's a guy that has reprehensible, philosophies that he adheres to.
Yeah.
And but musically, his music's brilliant, and it's brilliant in a way that is almost like outsider art in some ways. You know what I mean? Like he's like,
Definitely.
Like we take it for granted that this is what the music sounds like. Okay, everyone's familiar. It's like 20 years old at least. It's his earlier records. You think about the early Mayhem records, the Burzum record, early stuff.
Right.
Death Crush. That was such a unique sound for the time that it came out. And the idea that it really wasn't meant for other people. It was just kind of meant for this like inner circle of, black metal elitists, in some ways.
Right. Yeah.
And that there was a whole concept behind making the music in like an anti-popular way. It was supposed to be this immediate thing made with whatever instruments and recording equipment was around. He may not even tuned his guitars the right way. You know what I mean? Like everything was just kind of done in the moment. And I think that is a very interesting approach to making music. And with that said, like black metal pretty much comes from Varg, really. Like what modern black metal, like if you think about, we talked about Leviathan, heavily influenced by Burzum. Every black metal band is influenced by Burzum, if they like it or not, or if they admit it or not.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't have said it better myself. Varg did something that had never been done before, much in the same way that, Les Paul, invented the electric guitar and Jimi Hendrix perfected the electric guitar. Varg Vikernes made a sound that existed to some extent, but perfected it in an imperfect way, if that makes any sense. Like you said, he literally approached this, the writing of the Burzum self-title in a way that, or I think it might even been philosophy too, that had never been done. We're not gonna EQ the drums. We're not gonna tune the guitars. We're gonna play through the crappiest microphone that we can possibly get and the crappiest amp that we possibly get, and then adapt to that environment that he created, because the music didn't come out sounding like shit. The music comes out sounding really, really good. And he did, so you've got a creative mind. And, I've said this before and I'll say it again. I suspect that Varg is on the spectrum to some extent.
Okay. Yeah.
I based that off of watching some of the interviews that he did for like Until the Light Takes Us, and also his YouTube channel that got taken down a while back. There's something in the eyes and something in the way that he talks that gives me that impression. But I think that lends to his creativity, and I think that lends to his artistry, in the sense that his mind doesn't work in the same conventional way as anybody else. Anybody else going in trying to do something like that doesn't come out with the first Burzum album, doesn't come out with philosophy. They come out with something different. And like you said, I mean, his sound 100% influenced everybody, even his contemporaries. He influenced, Darkbone, Fenris from Darkbone. It's on record in that Until the Light Takes Us, that Varg was right on with the sound. He got the sound that everyone else was just trying to get, and Mayhem and all of them were they were tiptoeing around it, and they knew kind of what it was that they were trying to portray, but they just couldn't figure it out. And Varg did it, and he did it all by himself too, which is like also extremely impressive. And then if you want to get into vocal style too, his vocals are all over the place as well. He has the wails, he has the singing, he has the screams, and one can say that Burzum and Bethlehem come out around the same time, but I would guarantee you that all of these bands that we've discussed tonight on this list, they all pay homage back to Varg Vikernes, and maybe some Mayhem as well, but 100% Varg Vikernes is the guy who planted the seed for all of the music that we all, like you said, take for granted and listen to today.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm the kind of person who separates the artist from the art. You know what I mean? And you have to. I mean, that's a modern thing, man. Where suddenly you got to be this very upstanding citizen, in order for people to like your music or your art or your acting or your writing or whatever. But that's bullshit, man. I don't fucking agree with that. I think that the art is independent of the person. It's a reflection of who that person is, but also it doesn't necessarily mean that you're backing or supporting this person's ideology just because you appreciate or find influence from their music.
Right. I mean, it's a child in a lot of ways. A child can have two shitty parents but still be a good person, and it's the same with music in a sense. It's a creation that comes from the mind, and it might come from the mind of a fucking lunatic, but it doesn't mean that art is indicative of the creator. Because once the art, like I mentioned earlier, once the art is in the public domain, then it no longer belongs to the person who created it, and it's for the consumer to interpret the music and the art the way that it wants. I mean, there's plenty of examples of this, and we, of course, you can get into this all day long, and I don't feel the need to, because you and I agree that we just can separate the art from the artist, and I just encourage people to try and do the same thing. If you don't feel that that's your style, that's what you want to do, that's fine too, and I support you in that as well. But I think you're missing out. I think that's like really a limiting thing when there's something so good, but you just can't bring yourself to listen to because you're worried that what other people might think of you because you listen to something. I mean, if you're confident in your beliefs, and if you're confident in the way that you carry yourself, it shouldn't matter the kind of music that you listen to, unless of course you're listening to the freaking Nazi war songs or Screwdriver or some shit like that. Then it's a different matter. But with this kind of stuff, I don't see it taking away from your your character or whatever sort of way you want to carry yourself, in my opinion at least.
Yeah, let's face it, especially black metal, it's outsider music. Everyone wants to pretend like they're these fringe people. Everyone wants to embrace being like this outsider, but when they're faced with something that's actually on the outside, they want to run back into the cozy bubble of just fucking lameness, I guess. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah. And I if you're attracted to this dark stuff, you should explore it. You know what I mean? And also open up discussions about it. You know what I mean? Like what is it that fascinates me about all these things? And then the other thing about true like NSBM and like, racist music, it's the people who are listening to those bands, not for the quality of the music. They're listening to it because it has that message. You know what I mean?
Right.
I've heard bands that are part of that world, and the music's not good. You're listening to it because you support that ideology. You're not listening to it because they're awesome. You listen to it because that's part of your trip,
Right. Exactly. And I also just want to add too, if you haven't ever listened to Burzum, if there's any younger listeners, because I'm sure there are younger listeners to this podcast, if you haven't listened to Burzum because you're afraid of what people might think of you, I highly encourage you to listen to the music and make your own mind up, and don't listen to what other people tell you, because again, there's just this there's a lot of stuff out there in the world that you might really, really enjoy, but you may never expose yourself to it because you're concerned of what somebody else thinks about it. If you're worried about what someone thinks about you if you listen to Burzum, well, just don't tell anybody you listen to Burzum, but you can still like the music, and I highly encourage people to listen to it because it is good. And I wouldn't be telling, Mike knows me. Mike wouldn't be like friends with me and have me on his podcast if I was a racist.
Absolutely not.
I don't. Yeah. I don't condone that kind of behavior. Absolutely, I do not. And people can argue because I listen to it that I am condoning it, but I will disagree with that because I am attracted to the music. Burzum exposed me to a style of music that I now play. I absolutely love, and I will always hold Burzum's music like close to my heart, because it is truly, like, in my opinion, it is the truest of the true black metal, sounds out there. It is the origin of the black metal sound that everyone has expounded upon and turned into, the bands that we have today, like the Tombs and the Panzerfaust and the Behemoths, and it all started with this sound, and I think it deserves its due, and I think the world that we live in right now has dethroned the music, and I just can't. I don't support that. I don't mind if you want to dethrone the guy because the guy has got some like really, really obtuse ideals. That doesn't bother me. That's your trip, and you can do that if you so be it. But just like you don't get rid of Rosemary's Baby or Picasso's art, I don't think you should get rid of albums like the Burzum self-titled or Philosophism or Bellis. And with that, I also say I put a couple songs on the playlist. One of them is from Philosophism, and the other one is from the album that came out afterwards, Bellis. And again, I think it showcases a wide range. And when you're listening to this music, just remember that this was created at a time when there was nothing else out there to go off of, and it was all done by one guy. And just let yourself, get away from what everyone tells you, and just let yourself get absorbed into the music and see where it takes you. And you might find out that you actually like it a lot, and you might change, your opinion on the music at least. I'm not, like I said, not asking anybody to fucking start liking Varg, because I also think that he's a fucking mongoloid, but I don't think that should cause people to stop listening to his music.
Yeah, it's a great point you brought up about Roman Polanski and his art, and it's like, where would you start drawing the lines? You know what I mean? Like, Roman Polanski did some horrible things.
Yeah, right.
It's like, so okay, we can't watch Rosemary's Baby anymore, or, it's there. They have to be two separate things, and also you have to have full range to use whatever you have at your disposal, whatever resource you have to express yourself. That's what modern society is all about. Not some like repressive, like puritanical, like bullshit,
Right. Yeah. If we all just start, adhering to these, these strict guidelines of how we have to behave and how art should be portrayed, everything's going to just, start turning into the same, shade of gray. And I think I don't think that's what art's about. Art's about expression, and you've got, with that, art sometimes is created by eccentric people. Eccentric people do weird things, and, doesn't mean you have to agree with them, like, Roman Polanski. I don't agree with what he did. I don't agree with a lot of the things that people in Hollywood do, but I don't take away from the masterpiece movies that the guy made, or you know, the award-winning portrayals that some artist or some actor or actress, you know, portrayed in a film. You know, we have to definitely, you know, pick and choose why we don't like something for a different reason, not because, you know, I don't think we should be associating so much with so much, if that makes sense. You know, like, just, you don't have to like a person, but you can still like the art.
Yeah. No, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Evan, thanks a lot, man. This is great. It was great catching up with you. And yeah, as usual, we always had a great conversation.
Yeah, man, I really had a great time. I'm happy we could do this, and I definitely wish you the best of luck out on tour. And you know, we should definitely do this again sometime.
Totally,
You know,
man.
whenever we have some free time that we can, you know, get back together again. So
Yeah, absolutely. I would definitely welcome that. And once again, we're in a weird time warp because as you listen to this, I'll be home from this tour. And right now, I'm leaving in a scant several days. I'll be embarking on this. So it's kind of a weird time warp thing that we're dealing with here. Well, once again, thanks a lot. And thank you all for listening. And I'll talk to you next week. Take care.